Okay, so hello and welcome to this problem solving session for week 1 for the NPTEL course on environmental impact assessment, which is being taught by Dr. Harshit Soshan Lakra, who is the assistant professor at the Department of Architecture and Planning at the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. And I'm Isha Rathore. I am PMRF and research scholar at the Department of Architecture and Planning, IIT Roorkee. And we are going to have these problem solving sessions on Saturday. So as part of my fellowship, we are required to conduct these problem solving sessions. So so we are going to go through each week's content. There's also going to be another session, I guess, on Tuesday by another PMRF scholar who will cover the same topics, assignment problems, as well as go through the feedback. So if in case you miss one session, you can go to the next session, live session on Tuesday. We will try to address queries which you have regarding the week's content, as well as try to solve the assignment problems from previous run of this course. I have also taken the previous courses problem solving session, so I will go through that as well. And if these videos, these discussions will be put on YouTube, and the link and the presentation slides will be made available to you in the problem solving session, which you will find in the left side tab of the course. So you can find link to each week's problem solving session, both the YouTube link as well as the presentation slides link. Okay, so week 1 looked up at introduction to environmental management and EIA. So here we looked up at the general concept of environmental impact assessment and why we need to study EIA. So as we progress further, we will go through all the different weeks. So this is week 1 problem solving session. So what can you expect out of these discussions? So we are going to look up at the highlights from each week. So from week 1's content, we're going to look up at the key takeaways from each of the lecture units which were there. So we had 5 lectures in this week. So we will go through all of these highlights for each of the 5 weeks. Then we will look up at assignment questions. So these Q&A will be based on previous run of the assignment of the course. So assignment questions from the previous run of the same course, as well as we will look up at assignment questions with solutions and explanations on why that particular answer is correct. For this course, when the deadline for the same has passed, and if you have any queries and think that the answers are wrong, we can also address them in these sessions, and this will be communicated to the course team so that those questions are also addressed. Then if you have any queries, please make use of the discussion forum or ask a question tab, which is available in your in the course website. So if you have any questions, please write your queries there, and we will try to clarify these queries as and when we receive them for a particular week. If the query deals with another week, we will cover them in a different in the next week's presentation. And we will also look up at extended or additional topics where we can look up at a new we can have extended discussion on a focus topic which is relevant from this week's content. So let's dive into the highlights from week 1. So first of all, this course is designed around the United Nations Environmental Programme 6 Global Environment Outlook GEO6 report. So this was the most comprehensive report on the global environment since 2012, and each chapter of this of the course, as well as in EIA, has been dealt with in a larger detail in this report. As you can see from the cover of this report as well, that you can see a lot of different elements which are related to the urban environment. You can see renewable energy, you can see water, air, mountains, climate change, biodiversity, transportation infrastructure, all of these different things which come together and make this global environment. So if you want to have a further insight into AIA, you can consider reading this report. This is available online for free, so you can have a look at this report. Especially certain sections are very useful. So have a look at this as a reference. Okay, so for week one, lecture one was on the state of global environment for air. Here we looked up at emissions and looked up at air pollution, climate change, stratospheric ozone depletion, and exposure to persistent bioaccumulative and toxic chemicals. We also saw that air pollution leads to 6 to 7 million premature deaths per year and accounts for welfare losses of 5 trillion US dollar annually. And exposure to PM or particulate matter causes especially prominent in urban areas and affects urban residents. It also affects people who are dependent on burning fossil fuels, which is to the number of 3 billion people who are dependent on burning fossil fuels and for their daily activities like cooking food and other things. We also looked up at the decreasing emission trends in certain sectors, but the underlying factor was that these emission trends, which are decreasing, are being offsetted by increase in other sectors. So, for example, especially in developing countries, we have a lot of infrastructure and facilities being developed. So you can see a large number of power plants being built, large industrial facilities coming up. You have the increasing number of vehicles versus architectural practices, that constant balance which is being lost. We also have domestic fuel use. Most of, especially in India, also we have a lot of, we burn a lot of wood and we use dung cakes, etc., which causes a lot of CO2 emissions as well. Then the construction industry also causes has a large increase, emission increase. Also, the forest fires, open fires, which are getting more frequent. As you follow the news, you keep hearing about these open fire, forest fires happening. So these also account for emissions increase. So developing countries are certain sectors in developing countries are contributing more towards emission, while the developed countries have sectors in which emissions are different sectors in which emissions are higher. Then we looked up at anthropogenic or human activities which lead to greenhouse gas emissions increase, as well as their climate impacts, despite several mitigation activities which are being undertaken. Then we also looked up at reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions to meet climate goals. So this is just a highlight of what was discussed. So you can see that if we look up at the particulate matter 2.5 concentration, which is displayed on the y-axis, and we see the duration for 21st October to 26th October. This is right before, this is the week in which Diwali was observed. So this data is for, from 2022, and we see that increase in the concentration of this pollutant PM 2.5, which is caused by firecrackers. So you can see the air quality being the concentration of the pollutant increase, which indirectly which corresponds to your air quality decrease during that week in which Diwali is observed. Also during you would have heard the news in Delhi, the poor air quality which was seen this year itself, which is caused by the subtle burning in states like Chandigarh, in the states of Punjab and Haryana, which burn the remains of the crops after the cultivation has happened. So that also has an effect, especially seen during this Diwali period also. So these are certain factors which, as in India, especially affects the state of air, which we talk about. In lecture 2, moving on to lecture 2, it talked about the state of global environment biodiversity. So first, biodiversity is defined as the diversity of all the living things at the genetic, species, and ecosystem levels. So biodiversity helps in regulating climate, it helps in filtering air and water, it enables soil formation and mitigates the impact of natural hazards. So environment is closely related to human health, and a deterioration in environment leads to infectious diseases, as well as a disbalance between the global elements can cause effects on human health. We will look at them later. Then we looked up at how the genetic diversity is declining, which is causing a threat to food security, as well as causing testing the resilience of the ecosystems, including the agricultural systems which we have and the existing food security. Also, biodiversity laws, from land use change, habitat fragmentation, overexploitation, and illegal wildlife trade, invasive species which are sort of affecting and taking up resources from the native species, causing the decline of native species. Can be seen. Then we also have the constant pollution and climate change, which is driving the mass extinction of species, including the critical ecosystem providers such as the pollinators, which are getting extinct. So this mass extinction comprises of the Earth's ecological integrity and its capacity to meet human needs. And we have seen at least 5 extinctions which have happened so far, and we are currently in the 6th extinction state. Then we have looked up at how biodiversity loss causes equity issues, such as so the biodiversity, any sort of loss or the risk is first affecting the most vulnerable groups of the society. So first, the biodiversity loss at a more ground level first affects the poor people who are dependent on the biodiversity for their generic lifestyle, like for wood stock or for fodder for their animals. It also affects women and children who are more vulnerable than men who have more, let's say, white collar or blue collar type of jobs. Whereas women who forage the forest to get wood out of it or to have certain other activities out of it are more affected by this biodiversity loss. Then moving on to lecture 3, we looked up at the state of global environment, which is the oceans and coasts. So we looked up at effects like ocean warming and acidification, ocean pollution, increasing use of oceans and their coasts and deltas and basins for food production, transportation, settlement, recreation, resource extraction, and energy production. We also saw the rate of human-induced releases of greenhouse gases is driving this rising sea levels, also causing changes in the ocean temperature and ocean acidification, which is further affecting the ocean ecosystem. Also, coral reefs are being devastated by those changes. We also looked up at the problem of marine plastic litter, which are being entering the ecosystem, marine ecosystem, and has potential impact on human health through the consumption of fish and marine products which we have in our diet. So this study which was conducted, this is a study which found that plastics in human food are being detected. So 77% of those tested had microplastics in the human blood of the participants which were tested. So this microplastics have entered the human body, and this is an extreme concern. So you see a lot of packaging which is being used for food items, a lot of when we move towards mass-produced food or plastic or foods with pre-packaged food, you have plastic being used in them. You also have drinks which are bottled drinks which you consume. So all of these have some sort of microplastics which you consume, and this is what is being reflected in this study, where your bloodstream. 77% of the people who were tested, in their bloodstream, microplastics were found. So this is one of these studies which looked up at it. There are other studies also if you are interested. Looking up at the state of global, lecture 4 was the state of global environment, where we looked up at land and soil. So we looked up at the food production, which is the largest human-centric activity which uses land. Then we looked up at land degradation and desertification and how it is increasing. And there's an active threat for human well-being and ecosystem, especially in rural areas, which is dependent on land for their productivity. And the land degradation hotspots cover approximately 29% of the land globally, where some 3.2 billion people reside. Then we looked up at the deforestation rate, which has slowed down, but it still continues globally. Then we have urban clusters, which means urban clusters and their suburbs, which have grown by a factor of approximately 2.5 since 1975. And this has also caused the urban heat island effect. So urban heat island effect is basically when the city is much hotter than the surrounding rural area, because of the materials which are being used in the urban centers, like concrete, which store heat and trap heat and do not allow it to go out or get back to the atmosphere, because these materials are such closely built, and the green cover is not left in the urban areas, so which causes this increase in temperature in urban areas compared to their rural counterparts. So that is the urban heat island effect, which is again increasing because of how we have developed our city centers in urban areas. So moving on to last lecture, which is lecture 5 of the week. So here we looked up at the state of global environment, that is the fresh water. So we looked up at how there's an increasing pressure on water resources because of the population growth, the urbanization, water pollution, and unsustainable development across the world, and that pressure is being increased because of the climate change which we are facing. And this leads to disasters such as water scarcity, drought, and famine in certain areas. So you keep hearing about a lot of cases in which a drought is constantly happening in certain areas. Then also another topic which was being covered was on water quality. So water quality has also worsened significantly since 1990s, and this is because of the use of chemicals which we use in a lot of our activities like agriculture as well. So this is due to organic and chemical pollution, which is using pathogens, nutrients, pesticides, sediments, heavy metals, plastic and microplastic waste, which is being entering our waters because of the activities which we have been doing. Then we also looked up at how the water resources or freshwater resources in oceans are overexploited, poorly managed, and polluted. So approximately 1.4 million people die annually from preventable diseases such as diarrhea and intestinal parasites, which are associated with these pathogen polluted drinking water and inadequate sanitation facilities. And so this was the key highlights which were discussed in week 1. So does anybody have any questions before we go into the question and answers? So this is going to be like the interactive part of the session. So I'm going to ask you questions in this session, and you are going to have to respond in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and say the answers. The better way is to respond in the chat box, since we have large number of participants in the meeting. So does anybody have any questions? So the queries which we received this week are being covered further down. We will discuss them in the queries section. Okay, so before that, does anybody have any question? You can just unmute yourself and speak. I think nobody. Okay, so let's move on to the question and answer session. And I'm just going to open my chat box. Okay, so I am going to ask you a question, and then you can just type your answer, the option which you think is correct, and then we can have a discussion around this question. So the first question is, the case of Santa Barbara was related with A, oil spill, B, air pollution, C, noise pollution, or D, forest fire. So this is from the week's content only. Okay, so we have one answer which has come in. I will wait for a few other participants also to respond.
Air pollution.
Okay, so somebody said air pollution, which is B. Then we have another answer from a participant. So Mino and Sankavi has said A as the answer. So A is the correct answer. So Santa Barbara was a case of oil spill where the oil spilled on the floor floor of the sea, and this was a huge case because it led to an increase towards environmental awareness in terms of how our infrastructure, as well as how government should regulate and maintain the water and oceans. So this was a significant case which led to regulations being developed. So Santa Barbara is related to an oil spill incident. So A is the correct answer. Okay. So moving on to the next question. So human caused emissions are driven by changes in A, urbanization, B, economic activity, C, climate change, or D, all of the above. Okay, so we have one answer by Aditi, which is D. Khambate also says D. Minu has also said D. Okay, a lot of people are saying D. D is the correct answer. So human caused emissions are driven by changes in urbanization because a lot of human activities and infrastructure is being developed, and activities like factories and other things produce a lot of CO2 emissions. Then economic activity also causes CO2 emissions or human caused emissions. Climate change is also an independent factor which leads to emissions. For example, if you use because of extreme events, the use of air conditioning will become more prevalent. So that air conditioning in that way causes CO2 emissions. So climate change also drives the emissions. So D, all of the above is the correct answer. So on to the next question. Which of the following is not an air pollutant? A, PM10, B, PM2.5, C, ground level ozone, O3, or D, stratospheric ozone? Okay, so we have one answer again, D, which is by Aditi.
Stratospheric ozone.
Okay, somebody said stratospheric ozone. Khambate also says D. So D is the correct answer. So I would request people to just post it in the chat instead of saying it on the unmuting themselves and saying it. Since we have a lot of participants, it's better to post your answers in the chat box. Okay, so D is the correct answer. So particulate matter 10, particulate matter 2.5, and ground level ozone are all air pollutants, and stratospheric ozone is not an air pollutant. It protects us from it's the layer which protects us from the sun's UV rays. So D, stratospheric ozone is not an air pollutant, is the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to the next question. So this is the match the following. So you have to match group A with group B. So in group A, we have ecosystem diversity, we have species diversity, and we have genetic diversity. And you need to match it with the images which are given in group B. So you can now take your time and match all the three correctly. Okay, so we have one answer by Shrijit, which is B. Sankvi also says B. Minu also says B. Okay. Khalid, Joe, and okay, everybody agrees that it's B. Okay, so B is the correct answer. So you see ecosystem diversity. So ecosystem diversity you can see in figure 3. So you can see this forest ecosystem meeting the river ecosystem, which is again connected to a grassland ecosystem. So this images have 3 ecosystem being shown in the same image. So ecosystem diversity is being conveyed by image 3. So P matches with 3. Then we have species diversity in figure 2, where you see a lot of different species of animals, rodents, plants together, amphibians, all of these different species of species being seen together in this one picture. So species diversity matches with figure 2. Then genetic diversity is being shown by figure 1, where you see 3 similar species animals, but with different genetic material composition. So these could be their chromosomes, which are very different from each other. So this is genetic diversity being seen in the same species, which is the diversity you see in the same species. So B, where P matches with 3, Q matches with 2, and R matches with 1 is the correct answer, like all of you said. Okay, so moving on to question 6. So this is a true and false question. A mass extinction event is when species vanish much faster than they are replaced. And this is usually defined as about 75% of the world's species being lost in a short amount of geological time, which is less than 2.8 million years. So is this statement true or false? Okay, so I see a lot of you voting for true. Just wait for a few more people. Okay, so A, true is the correct answer. So a mass extinction event is usually is defined as when species vanish much faster than they are replaced, and this is when 25% of the world's species population is lost in a very short period of geological time, which is less than 2.8 million years. We have so far seen 5 cycles of mass extinction events which have happened, and we are currently in the 6th mass extinction event phase. Okay, so the statement was true, so A, true, is the correct answer. Okay, moving on to next question. So which among the following are the fastest growing coastal megacities? Now this is a multi-select question, so more than one options can be correct. So we have A, Lagos in Nigeria, we have B, Guangzhou in China, C, Dhaka in Bangladesh, and D, Delhi in India. So more than one options can be correct in this question. Okay, so we have Srijit saying B and C. We have Sanvi saying A and B. Khalid also says A and B. Minu says B. Okay, so we have all A, B, and C coming in the answers now. Okay, so the correct answer is all three, A, B, and C. So Lagos in Nigeria, Guangzhou in China, and Dhaka in Bangladesh are all fastest growing coastal mega cities. Whereas Delhi in India is not even a coastal city. So that was the catch. So all three are the correct answers. They are all the fastest growing coastal mega cities. Okay, so now moving on to the next question. Following are the environmental benefits received from the coastal ecosystems. A, coastal stabilization. B, regulation of coastal water quality and quantity. C, transportation of heat. And D, all of the above. Okay, so we have a lot of D's, a C, again some D's. Okay. Okay, more D's. Okay, so all of these are the environmental benefits which we receive from coastal ecosystems. They help in coastal stabilization, regulation of the coastal water body, water quality and quantity, and the transportation of heat, where you have the sea breeze and the land breeze, which helps in the transportation of heat and management of heat in coastal areas. So D, all of the above, is the correct answer. Moving on to question 10, which of the following are marine issues? Now this is again a multi-select question in which more than one options can be correct. So we have A, tropical coral reef, B, ocean currents, C, ocean noise, D, sand and deep sea mining. Which of the following are marine issues which are seen in marine ecosystem? Okay, we have A, C and D, we have C and D. Okay, we have B and D also. A and D, A, C, D. Okay. So the correct answer is A, C, and D. That is, tropical coral reefs are getting affected by human activities in the marine ecosystem, whereas ocean currents are natural phenomena which happen, which are not affected by the marine anthropogenic activity in marine ecosystems. And we also have the ocean noise, and we have the sand and deep sea mining, which are again marine issues. Okay, so A, C, and D are the correct answers. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Desertification is land degradation in arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas, resulting from various factors, including climatic variations and human activities. So is this statement true or false? Okay, so we have A true. Okay, another. Okay, a lot of people agree that the statement is true. Okay, so the statement is true. The definition of desertification is land degradation in arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas resulting from various factors, including climatic variations and human activities. So from an examination point of view, I would like to highlight that definitions are very critical. So definitions of key terms from each lecture, I would suggest you make notes of the definitions from each of the lecture units and revise them before your final NPTEL exam, because definitions are truly significant to this course. Also, in such type of questions, look for keywords, like look for the key things, like it's being defined in all three areas, like arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas. these can be critically modified in a question and asked again. So look up at the definition and understand the meaning behind the definition for a clearer understanding and for your exam. Okay, so A was the correct answer. Moving on to question 12. So mining activities have following environmental impact. This is again a multi-select question. So more than one options can be correct. So mining activities has following environmental impacts. A, it affects the ecosystem. B, it causes soil contamination. C, it causes water pollution. And D, it causes air pollution. More than one options can be correct, guys. Okay, so we have a lot of A, B, C, D coming. We have A, B, D. We have a A, C, D. We have a B, C, D also. Okay, another B, C, D. Okay, so all four were correct. All four are environmental impacts which are caused by mining activities. So it affects the ecosystem where mining activity is happening. It causes soil contamination. It also causes water pollution because of the minerals being going down and affecting water bodies and the groundwater level. Also, the air pollution because of the particulate matters or finer particles, dust particles which are being released around these mining activities. So all four options are correct. So, okay, mining activities causes all of these impacts. So moving on to the next question, which is as per the United Nations World Water Assessment Program, WWAP 2012, water scarcity is defined as A, less than 10 meter cube per capita of available renewable fresh water per year, or less than 100 meter cube per capita, or less than 1000 meter cube per capita, or less than 10,000 meter cube per capita. Okay, I see. Yeah, so this is another definition from a very significant source, which is the United Nations World Water Assessment Program. Okay, so we have a few C's, a B and a D. Okay, so the correct answer is C, that is water scarcity is defined as less than 1000 meter cube per capita of available renewable fresh water per year. So again, this is a definition which is significantly relevant. Okay, so C is the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to the next question. So this is from week 0 assignment from the previous one of the course. So expand SEA. The options are A, State Environment Authority, B, Strategical Evaluation and Assessment, C, Strategic Environmental Assessment, or D, C, Environment Assessment. Okay, so we are getting options. Oh, this is a single choice question. One answer is only correct. Okay, so we have a lot of C's. We have a A. Okay, so the correct answer is C, that is Strategic Environmental Assessment. So SEA or Strategic Environmental Assessment is a systematic process for evaluating the environmental implications of a proposed policy, plan, or program. And it provides the means for looking at cumulative effects, like all the effects being considered together, and appropriately addressing them at the earliest stage of decision making alongside economic and social considerations. So you consider all the effects together because of all the effects on the environmental systems because of a proposed policy or plan or program, and you address them at the earliest decision making stage. Okay, so that is SEA, Strategic Environmental Assessment. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Which type of project usually requires an EIA or Environmental Impact Assessment? This is again a multi-choice question. More than one options can be correct. So A, small housing building, B, dams and reservoirs, C, industrial plants on a larger scale, or D, garden development. Okay, so we are getting some responses. Okay. Okay. So we have a lot of B and C. We have A, B and C. We also have D and C. Okay, so the correct answer is B and C. So dams and reservoirs are large-scale projects for which you need to do environmental impact assessment, because when you have such large project, you are dealing with both a water body and you're also dealing with a larger scale of infrastructure which is being developed. You are affecting the flow of a river, when you build dams and reservoirs, and you're also controlling the flow of the river. For these kind of projects, you also have displacement which happens. That is, certain villages where this dam or this reservoir is being built, those villages will be required to be resettled or moved somewhere else because it's a larger scale project. So you need to do an EIA in that in this kind of project. Then again, for industrial plants, which are large scale industrial plants, you have to do an EIA because of the amount of the type of activity which you're going to do in the industrial plant, the sort of emissions which are going to be generated, the cost of infrastructure and the clearing of the land are all aspects and impacts which you need to consider in this type of project. So EIA is again required for industrial plants on a larger scale. And then for small housing building, you don't need to do a EIA because you have a smaller plot area and you're just building a house which will not lead to any sort of large level emissions. You'll have normal emissions out of the instruments or the kind of appliances and equipments you use in the house. And again, garden development does not require an EIA because you're just having growing plants and trees, mostly native, and it will not largely affect the environment in a much larger scale. So the correct answer were B and C. So dams and reservoirs and industrial plants require an EIA. Okay, so moving on to the next question. So in India, Environment Protection Act was enacted in which year? So A, 1976, B, 1958, C, 1986, and D, 1972. Okay, so we have a few answers coming in. We have a C, we have C and D, okay. Okay, we have a lot of C's. Okay, so the correct answer is C, that is the Environment Protection Act in India was enacted in 1986. And this was with the objective of providing protection and improvement of the environment. And it empowers the central government to establish authorities which are charged with the mandate of preventing the environmental pollution in all its form and to tackle specific environmental problems which are peculiar to different parts of the country. And this act was last amended in 1991, but this act was enacted in 1986. So C is the correct answer, like a lot of you have said. So again, from an examination point of perspective, years in which laws and acts were enacted, especially in India, from an Indian perspective, are important. Certain global level acts and laws are also very relevant to environmental impact assessment, which we will discuss in the history week 3 phase. But these dates and years are important for significant events which have happened. So keep a note of the years in which certain acts are being passed and with what purpose they are being passed and which agency has passed it. Okay, so just a note for your examination point of view. Moving on to the next question, expand CPCB. So is it A, Climate and Pollution Control Board, B, Central Pollution Control Board, C, Center for Pollution and Climate Behavior, or D, Climate and Planet Conservation Board? Okay, so we have a lot of A's, we have B's also. Okay, so again, abbreviations are important. What is the full form of the abbreviations or these shorthand versions of organization names? Okay, we also have a C. Okay, somebody can say a D also. We'll have all the answers then. Okay, so the correct answer is B, which is the Central Pollution Control Board. So the Central Pollution Control Board, or the CPCB, is a statutory organization. You can see the logo for it on the left side. So this was constituted in September of 1974. And this is under the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974. So the CPCB is entrusted with powers and functions under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. And the functions of CPCB is to promote cleanliness of streams and wells in different areas of the state by prevention, control, and abatement of water pollution, and to improve the quality of air, to prevent, control, and abate air pollution in the country. So it deals with both air pollution as well as water pollution. So you will see the CPCB monitoring the level of particulate matter which is being in the air. It also defines the air quality. So CPCB is the organization for both water and air pollution control. Okay, so CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, is the correct answer. So B is the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to the next question, which is from week 1 of last year's previous course run. So which sector is responsible for most carbon emissions? A, industries, B, transportation, C, electricity generation, or D, maritime shipping? Okay, so we have answers coming in. We have A, we have C, okay. Oh, we have all as well. All is not answer. So we are asking for which sector has the most carbon emissions. We know all of these sectors contribute to carbon emissions, but which sector contributes the most to carbon emissions? So a lot of A's we are getting. Okay, so this question is being derived from a figure which was discussed in the air lecture. So the correct answer is C, which is electricity generation. So when you see the greenhouse gas emissions by sectors, we see that energy has the largest contribution to gas emissions, followed by agriculture, forestry, land use, followed by industry and waste. So C, electricity generation, is the correct answer. I can understand why a lot of you thought industries is the correct answer, but when you break down the energy use, you can see we have energy use in industry, we have energy use in buildings as well as in transportation. And if you further break it down into the sort of transportation modes we have, like shipping, aviation, road transport, then you can look up at how energy is used in industries like in iron and steel industry, food industries, chemicals, other industries. You can see those percentages also in this figure. Then energy use in buildings is being divided into commercial and residential buildings. So all of these, as well as fuel and emissions from other kind of fuel activities, also leads to 73% of emissions being generated out of the energy sector itself. So electricity generation has the largest contribution, which is 73%. So again, reading figures is also a very important part of how you go through this course, because these figures are very significant, especially in terms of when you see the numbers. Try to see the numbers and understand what is the key takeaway from a figure to understand what these figures mean. So see, electricity generation contributes to most carbon emissions. Moving on to the next question. So which transportation mode is responsible for the most carbon emissions? We have A, road, freight and passenger, B, maritime shipping, C, aviation, or D, rail network. So which transportation mode causes most carbon emissions? Okay, we are seeing a lot of B, we see A and C as well. Okay. Okay, same options B, C, and A. Okay. Okay, so this is a single select answer only. We are asking which transportation mode is responsible for most carbon emissions. So again, this is derived out of a figure. So A, road, freight, both freight and passenger has a larger proportion of carbon emissions. So we see 45% is by passenger road traffic, and then 29.4% is by road freight traffic, or these shipping orders which you see, movement of goods and services, those kind of things is freight. So together both road passenger and freight contributes to 74% of transport emissions from road vehicles, which is the largest transportation mode which causes most carbon emissions. You also need to look up at the frequency of these kind of things compared to as well as the emissions which it is doing. So again, reading figures is important. Okay, so A, road, freight and passenger is the correct answer. So moving on to the next question. The modern environmental movement focuses on A, preservation, B, risk, C, conservation, or D, elimination. Okay, so we have preservation, saying another A. Okay. Well, we have a C as well. D as well. We have A again. Okay, a lot of you seem to say A, that is preservation, but the correct answer is B, risk. So the environmental movement has moved from conservation to preservation and to risk. So right now we are dealing with risk. We are considering the modern environmental movement and we are looking at risks like climate change, the rising temperatures, glacial warming. So we are dealing it from the perspective of risk. Earlier we used to deal with the perspective of preservation, but right now we are looking at the environmental movement in the direction of risk. So B, risk is the correct answer. So again, looking at these figures and the transitioning is something which you could have captured. Okay, so moving on to the next question, which is a state true or false. So One Health is not relevant in the prevention and control of zoonosis. Is this true or false? Okay, so it's false. Okay, somebody says B, false. Okay, one option we have so far. Okay, another B, okay. Okay, a lot of B's. Okay, so B is the correct answer. So One Health looks up at humans, animals, and environment together. So it also deals with the prevention and control of zoonosis, and so it deals with all three. That is humans, animals, and environment. So B is the correct answer. That is false. Okay, so moving on to next question. Which among the given options are provisioning services that people obtain from ecosystems? So we looked up at different kind of services which people obtain from ecosystems. So provisioning services, A, bioenergy, B, decomposition, C, soil formation, and D, medicine. Okay, so we are. So this is also a multi-select question, I think. I forget to put multi-select. More than one options can be correct, right? Okay, so we have B and A's. Okay. Okay, we have A and B also as an option. Okay, so the correct answer is both A and D, medicine. So we have different kind of services which we obtain from the ecosystem. So first we have the provisioning services, which are things that we directly obtain from the ecosystem. So we get things like food, medicine, timber, fiber, bioenergy. These are things that you directly procure from the ecosystems. Then you have regulating services, which help in the regulation of the natural cycles. So you have water filtration, waste decomposition, climate regulation, crop pollination, regulations of some human diseases. Then we also have supporting services, which are nutrient cycling, photosynthesis, soil formation, which happen which support the functioning of the ecosystem. Then we have cultural services, which aid or uh, influence the certain cultural parameters of tribes and human societies or communities, which are enriching. With some communities have an enriching perspective towards the environment. Some have recreational objectives. Some associate an aesthetic value to it. Some associate a spiritual value to the ecosystem, where they worship certain plants and uh, animals, those kind of things. So those are cultural services. So in the given options, bioenergy and medicine are the provisioning services, whereas decomposition is a regulating service and soil formation is a supporting service. So again, from the ecosystem services, you can see reading the figures again important. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Which among the options does the coral triangle regions include? So this is again a multi-choice question. A. Indonesia, B. Vietnam, C. Malaysia, and D. Philippines. So which of these cities are being included in the Coral Triangle region? So more than one option is correct. Okay, we have A, B, we have A, we have B, C, and D. We have A and D, okay. C and D, A, C and D, okay. B, C and D, okay. We have a lot of options. Okay, we have another A, C, and D. Okay, so the correct answer is A, C, and D. That is Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines are the regions which are included in the Coral Triangle. So the Coral Triangle Initiative deals with the coral reefs, fisheries, and food security implementation in this Coral Triangle region. So regions which are included are Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and Solomon Islands. So all of these areas are included in the Coral Triangle. Then we also have the scientific area, which does with R&D related initiatives relating to coral reefs, fishery, and food security, and that you can read from the figure. So the Coral Triangle region include A, C, and D, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. So A, C, and D is the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Which four sustainable development goals are connected with land resource? A, zero hunger, reduce inequalities, good health and well-being, life on land. B, good health and well-being, life on land, reduce inequalities, clean water and sanitation. Then C, life on land, zero hunger, industry, innovation and infrastructure, or climate action. Or D, reduce inequalities, clean water and sanitation, life on land, and zero hunger. Okay, so we have an option A. So which SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals are connected with land resources, which deal with land? Okay. Oh, this is a single answer only. Single select answer only. All the four SDGs are written in the same statement. If you see, zero hunger is one goal, reduce inequalities is one goal, good health and well-being is another, and life on land is another, and so on. Okay, so we have a few A's, we have a few C's, and D as well. Okay, so the correct answer is A. So Sustainable Development Goal 2 deals with zero hunger, which deals with land production of food on land. Then we have 3, which Sustainable Development Goal 3, which deals with good health and well-being, which is again associated with how we use land resources. Then we have Sustainable Development Goal 10, which talks about reduced inequalities, which is again associated with land resources. And then 15, life on land, deals with the quality of land resource. So Sustainable Development Goal 2, 3, 10, and 15 deal with land resources. So you have zero hunger, good health, and well-being, reduce inequalities, and life on land. A is the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to next question, again multiple choice question. What are the main critical concerns of food security as defined by United Nations Environment Programme 2019? A, affordability, B, availability, C, accessibility, or D, distribution. Okay, we have A, B, and C. We have B and C in options. Okay, A, B, and C again. Okay, another A, B, and C. Okay, so everybody is saying A, B, and C now. So the correct answer is B and C. So critical concerns within food security as defined by United Nations Environment Programme deals with three things, three critical concerns, which is the availability of food, access to food, and the utilization of food. So availability and access are the critical concerns defined by United Nations Environment Programme in the given options. So B and C is the correct answer. Okay. So moving on to Next question. Which sector consumes the most amount of water? A. Manufacturing. B. Agriculture. C. Construction. Or D. Technology and innovation. Okay, we have agriculture. A lot of B's. Okay, another. We also have a C. Okay, so the correct answer is B. Agriculture. Agriculture consumes the most amount of water. So that is correct. B. Okay, so now we're going to look up at week 0 assignment from this run of the course. So week 0 basically considers all of the different weeks content and gives you the questions for the same. So this is just for you to test the different kind of questions which are there, how you select answers, and you get a basic understanding of how to answer questions for each week. And this is purely based on this is purely based for you to understand how to respond and how marking is given. So if you do not get answers to these questions, some of these questions are from different weeks which have not been covered so far. So do not lose heart at that point. All of this content will come in the subsequent further weeks. Okay, and you can come back to week 0 assignment after you have gone through all of the weeks content to see how you have understood the entire course. Okay, so let's begin week 0 assignment. You can also see the answers to week 0 assignment in your tab, I believe. So question 1, the European EIA directive requires and environmental EIS to include. This again a multi-select question. So you have A, description of the project, B, description of the physical characteristics of whole development, C, description of the main characteristics of the operational phase of the project, and D, estimate by type and quantity of expected residues and emissions. Okay. So we are getting all 4 options so far. Okay. Okay, I believe everybody has gone through week 0 assignment already. Okay, so A, B, C, D are all correct answers. So in EIA, when the final report is being prepared for the project or the plan or policy, you first have the description of the project where you say this is a project for a big factory, this much square area. You describe the basics of the project. Then you describe the physical characteristics of the whole development, that these are the main buildings which are going to come up. This annexure will come up, these type of roads will be developed, this will require clearing of this much forest area, removing of these trees. Then, so that is description of physical characteristics of the whole development. Then you have descriptions of main characteristics of operational phase of project. So you'll have this much material coming from this source. You will have other kind of things. So you describe the characteristics of how this is going to operate, water from this source, electricity from this source. It will make its own electricity, or it will have renewable or non-renewable resource or energy source. So those kind of characteristics, again, you define in a separate section. Then you estimate the type and quantity of the residues and emissions which are being generated at different stages of the project. So certain criteria and conditions need to be met. We will see them in further weeks. But the report includes all of these 4 sections and several other sections which we will see. So A, B, C, and D are all the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to question 2. Impact identification techniques for scoping purpose include, it's again a multi-select, environmental that are particularly valued should be identified, impacts considered to be particular concern to affected parties, the methodology should be used to predict and evaluate different impacts, and the scale at which those impacts need to be considered. Okay, so we again have A, B, C, D. Another A, B, C, D. Okay, let's wait for a few more people to answer the questions. Okay, we have A, B, and D also. Okay, another option. Okay, we have B, C, and D also. Okay, so all A, B, C, and D are correct answers. So in impact identification techniques, which we use for scoping, we look up at the environment which needs to be studied for identifying the impacts on it. So A is correct. Then we look up at the impacts which are being generated. You have to look up at the different types of impact. It's a direct impact or indirect impact or the cumulative impact. So the different types of impact needs to be studied on different parties as well and on different environmental factors like air, water, soil, biodiversity. All of these impacts need to be studied. So B also is included in the impact identification techniques. Then the methodology is also used to predict the different type of impacts which are going to happen on all of these environmental factors. And you need to predict what kind of impacts are happening, and is it a long-term impact or a short-term impact, or is it what do you say, recoverable impact or not recoverable impact? Is it a permanent impact, temporary impact? All of these different kind of the methodology should predict this and evaluate the different impacts which we have identified. So C is also considered, and then the scale of this impact is also considered: long-term, short-term, permanent, all of those scales. So all four things are considered in the impact identification techniques for scoping. This will again come in a different week content, so you don't need to beat yourself up if you don't know answers to most of these questions or don't understand these questions yet, because
Excuse
we
me,
will
ma'am.
understand. Yeah, yeah.
Ma'am, my answers are not delivered to you by chat.
Ah, okay. What do I do with that? I don't know if you can do some settings on it. You can just write your answers for yourself, and anyway, I will see those answers. Like I am discussing these answers in after people have said. It's just for your own understanding that you write it in the chat.
All right, ma'am.
Okay, yeah? I'm not keeping tabs on who is writing or not writing. It's just for your understanding. Okay, so moving on to next question.
Okay.
State true or false. So in India, we have terms of reference, TOR, which are used for scoping purpose. So is the statement true or false? Again, this is a content from another lecture, which is not week 1 and 2 content, which you have seen so far. So the statement is true. We use terms of reference for scoping purpose. So A, true is the correct answer. We will discuss this when this term will come. Okay, so moving on to next question. Ethical EIA process is required when issues of fairness, equity, and justice predominate, and when stakeholders are willing to identify and reconcile these ethical conflicts. So is this statement true or false? A, true, and B, false. A lot of truths. Okay, so the statement is true. Again, we will look up at ethical EIA process and how these issues are being dealt with, how fairness, equity, and justice are being incorporated in the EIA process, especially when the stakeholders or the parties involved have different opinion and different concerns. Like somebody will have an organization will have profit in mind, like a contractor or the industry owner will have profit in mind, while the villages which are being displayed will have certain other concerns like livelihood being affected or their land being taken. So how an ethical EIA process is ensured in this kind of scenario. So that is the correct definition of the ethical EIA process. So the statement is true. So moving on to next question. Output required for the impacts under consideration. I don't know what is this. Geographical areas, different state. Output required. Okay, I have to, I think, go through this question. I don't understand this question. Maybe I copied it wrong or something. So I will check this question and let you know what this question means in the next week's content or in the discussion forum. So moving on to the next question, state true or false. The cost benefit analysis, or CBA, is seen as a decision-making technique in which full consequences, cost and benefits of a course of action are summarized in monetary or money terms. So is the statement true or false? Okay, so we have A, we have A's. Okay. Yeah, so this statement is true. So a cost benefit analysis includes considering the costs and benefits of any action or any policy which you are undertaking, and summarizing those effects in terms of money. How much how much is the cost of this action? How much is the benefit in monetary terms of this action? And it helps you to look at the action in a monetary sense. So look up at it in a more quantitative perspective, where you see the quantity or the cost which each of these that is both the positives and negatives you see in the monetary terms. So this definition sort of is correct. So A, this is true, is the correct answer. Okay, so moving on, state true or false. Participation refers to approaches that give more active role to public in influencing the plan development and approval. So is this statement true or false? Okay, so this is again very straightforward. So I see a lot of A's. So yes, the statement is correct. So at different stages of the EIA process, we require and we promote the participation of the different stakeholders, all of them coming together and putting up their concerns and giving their suggestions in the different stages of the EIA process. And this is a mandatory uh, in certain stages to get the participation of people. So, and it refers to approaches where you give the public a more active role in influencing the plan development and approval process. So the statement is true. Okay, moving on. Again, a state true or false statement. Consultation refers to exercises involving passive audience. The public view is solicited, but respondents have little active influence over any resulting decisions. So is this true or false? Again, this is from another week, which we have not discussed so far. All of these questions apparently are from different weeks' content. So we have a few A's. Okay. Okay, so A is the correct answer. So in consultation, people are involved, but their opinions are taken to a very surface level view, and it does not lead to a very active influence on the decisions which are being made. So other type of techniques are used to have a more active voice of the public in the decision making process. So we will discuss all the pros and cons of the different methods which are being used, but consultation is a very passive role being given to the public. Okay, so this is a true statement. Moving on, what are the different types of auditing? So this is a multi-select question. A, decision point audit, B, implementation audit, C, performance audit, and D, predictive technique audit. Okay, again, this is from a different week content. Okay, so we have B and D. Okay, B and D, B and C. Okay, so actually all four are the different types of auditing which are done. So audit is a process which you undergo after something has been completed. Some sort of stage has been completed, and you sort of look back at it to see what was right or what was wrong, or whether what was expected out of it has been achieved. And the audit can be all these different types, like you look up at the decision points and see whether all the decisions were correct or wrong, and what sort of outcomes were achieved when this decision was made, and whether this decision can be used in another a similar type of project, whether this decision can be looked up at. In implementation audit, you look up at how the EIA process and how the construction things were implemented, and how was it was it feasible? Was it the correct way? Was it the best optimum way? You see those kind of things. Then performance audit is how well this performed in comparison to other things. And then predictive techniques is when you look up at techniques. So we will discuss all of these later as well. But this is the general idea of the types of auditings which we have. Okay, moving on. So again, a straight true or false. So implementation monitoring involves checking that the project has been implemented in accordance with the planning approvals, that mitigation measures have been carried as proposed, and that any conditions associated with the approval have been honored. So is this statement true or false? Okay, we have an A, another A. Okay, more A's. Okay, so this statement is true. So after everything is done, we look up at, we monitor the implementation which has happened, and we check if the project has been implemented as per the planning approvals, which is received, the sort of mitigation measures which was suggested have been carried out, and any conditions with the approval which were given, like anything which was written in the side notes or anything, like any conditions which the project owners or the project has to meet has been honored. So we check all of these in the implementation monitoring stage. Again, we will discuss about this further in the course. So the statement is true. Okay, so far, if anybody has any queries, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand, and I will check this. Okay, and or you can just unmute yourself and ask. After this, we will look up at queries which we received in the discussion forum, both in this run of the course as well as in the past run of the course, for a deeper understanding of what questions people have asked so far. Okay, on a side note, please use the discussion forums to ask questions, because these sessions will be more helpful to you if you have questions and if you have queries, even basic simple queries like definitions of certain terms or anything, you can just ask in the discussion forums. Okay, does anybody have any queries so far before we go on to the next session? Okay, so let's move on to queries then. Okay, so the first query which we received was, what are mangroves? So mangroves are shrubs or trees which grow mainly in the coastal saline water, and they grow in equatorial climate, typically in coastline and tidal areas. So one example of mangroves is the Sundarbans, which you have, which everybody would have heard growing up. So this is one of the largest forests in the world, approximately 140,000 hectare area, and it lies in the delta of the Ganga, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers in the Bay of Bengal. So this is basically these type of trees or shrubs which grow. They have special adaptation properties. That is, they take up extra oxygen and they remove salt from water. So that is why they can grow up in all of these river beds and river waters, and they can tolerate these type of conditions, while most of the other plants cannot survive in these type of ecosystems. So mangroves are associated with these coastal ecosystems. These are these kind of trees and trees groups which you see. Okay, I hope that answers your question. If whoever asked us here. Transcripts week-wise. We will upload these videos and we will upload these presentation slides in a folder if you want to access them later, and you can access them directly from your from the NPTEL course tab. So you can see for each week you will have a row and column in which these details will be given, both for today's session as well as Tuesday's session. Okay. Do you mean transcripts for these, or do you mean transcripts for the lecture courses? I believe the transcripts for lecture courses are already there. Does that answer your question, Dr. D? I don't know why it says Dr. D. Does that answer your question? Dr. Dipali Sapre, I think. Okay, I will check with the team as well if these transcripts are available or not for the lecture weeks. And I will put that in the discussion forum, whatever they answer, or I will ask them to put the transcripts out in the lectures. They used to have transcripts in the last run of the course, so I will still ask them. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next query. So what are biomes? So we discussed biomes again in the land module. So biome refers to the community of plants and animals that occur naturally in an area, and they often have common characteristics which are specific to that area. Biomes are also known as major life zones, and they in these the animals, the communities of plants and animals, they have common adaptation strategies for surviving those kind of environments in which they have. So, for example, you have a desert biome in which you have animals like the camel who stores water in its hump. You have cactus which goes down and takes up water from the ground and survives the harsh conditions of the desert. So these are the desert biome includes camel and cactus, whereas a grassland biome will have green shrubs, a large tree, and those kind of things. So different biomes have different characteristics of biodiversity which exist. So that is biome, the community of plants and animals that occur naturally in any given area. Okay, which have common characteristics which are specific to that area for surviving that area. Okay, moving on to next question. So how does mass extinction happen in the world? So there, so far there have been 5 mass extinctions which have happened, and the causes of those 5 mass extinctions have been, the first one was changes in sea level, which changed the balance of the water quality. It changed the salt and oxygen concentration in the oceans, which caused the extinction of species which were living in these areas because they have certain ranges in which they can survive. So the first cause was change in the sea level. The second cause was meteorite attacks on Earth, anoxic conditions, volcanic activities, which led to extinction of large animals during the Permian Triassic extinction. So this is again a theory that there was a meteorite attack and volcanic activities might have led to this extinction. So that is another cause for mass extinction. Then the increase in temperature, which is leading to melting of glaciers and an increase in sea level, is again a cause of mass extinction. How mass extinction happens in the world is certain human activities and things like invasive species or species which are not corresponding to a particular area. When they start replacing native species, these native species are plants or animals which are found in a particular area. So for example, if you have a palm tree you have palm tree in the coastal areas, but you sort of people have bought them into their own construction in their own houses, like for the look and aesthetic of that thing. So it's affecting the kind of plants and plants which are in that area. So this is a type of an invasive species. Then you also have diseases which cause mass extinction. Then you also have chemicals and other things which are, again, all of these are human activities which are sort of leading towards causing large changes in the environment right now. So these are certain explanations to how mass extinction happen in the world. Okay. Moving on, so how does aeroplane generate emissions of CO2? So this is through the jet fuel which is being used in the aircrafts or aeroplanes. So you see combustion of 1 kg of jet fuel produces 3.16 kg of carbon dioxide. And again, this volume is also dependent on other characteristics like the aircraft efficiency, maintenance, distance traveled, the load it is carrying, passengers and cargo, as well as the weather conditions. So aeroplane fuel actually generates CO2. Uh, it also causes other effects which cause warming effects. It also produces the nitrogen oxide, vapor trails, and cloud formations, which also affect the airspace. Okay, I hope this answers your question. Okay, moving on. So how does the ocean become healthy? This was another question which we received this week. So for an ocean to become healthy, again, a lot of things can be done. First and most uh, a priority thing I would say is eliminating the discharge of the plastic litter and microplastics, which are sort of incorporated in our marine ecosystems or ocean ecosystems. So you have a lot of microplastic and litter which is being dumped into, and not just plastic litter, all the different kind of litters as well, from land-based sources, from like ports and bridges, as well as from sea-based sources like ships, which go on these ocean beds, ocean floors, basically. Then you can also have stronger regulations and technology development on cleaning the ocean, training programs and capacity building workshops for people who are interested and who want to take an active role into keeping the oceans clean and healthy. Again, control on the anthropogenic pollution, taking measures to avoid overexploitation of the ocean, and a sort of irreversible factor is the effect of global climate change, where we see the water temperature also increasing, the ocean temperature also increasing because of the global climate change, which has been occurring. Apart from the ocean biodiversity, you also have people who are being affected because of because of the poor health of the ocean ecosystem, and these are people who are dependent on these oceans for their lifestyle and livelihoods, like the fish farming communities which are capturing these fishes, and also people who have some sort of cultural practices associated with the oceans. So this is my understanding of the question and my response to it. Okay, moving on. So how do we calculate the air index for a particular country if required? So different countries have different norms, but mostly it's based on the type of pollutants which are present in the airspace at a given point of time. So in India, especially the Indian government or the CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board, has the AQI or air quality index in the range of 0 to 500, 0 being very good and 500 being severe or poor, and or unhealthy or unbearable sort of. So, and we calculate this based on 8 major pollutants which are present in the airspace. So we have the particulate matter, PM 2.5 and PM 10. We have carbon monoxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ammonia, and lead. And associated with all of these pollutants, we have a benchmark or a comparison standard, where we say if this much percentage is being present, this much is allowed, and if it exceeds that much, then we calculate a sort of back calculation we do to get to the final AQI number. But it's based on these 8 major pollutants which are present in the airspace in India. Okay, moving on to next question. So this is a very interesting question. So if climate change itself is a consequence of environmental degradation, how is it again an environmental driver, as it itself is caused due to other factors like urbanization, population growth, etc.? Okay, so this is my response to the question. So climate change again um, is caused by human factors like urbanization, population growth, etc. But it has also become an independent driver of environmental change because it is now posing a very serious threat and risk, because it has sort of affected the other environmental factors and parameters in a very because everything is in the environment is connected. Every effect has a cause and affects cause has a direct or an indirect effect on other resources as well. So this climate change has caused direct and indirect effects on all environmental parameters of biodiversity, air, water, uh, land, oceans. It has caused effect on all of these environmental parameters. So it is driving it has become an environmental driver at this point, because regardless of human action or even human presence now, the impacts are continuing to occur. So you see a lot of heat waves which are happening, a lot of uh, the melting of ice glaciers and all of these things which are sort of now not dependent on the type of human activity which is happening. Because even if the human activity is stopped, or any sort of negative human activity is stopped, the temperature of the earth will continue to increase right now. So it has become sort of like challenge to human societies now. So it has become an independent driver, even though it is caused by human effects and other factors. So this was a very interesting question to me. And if anybody would like to, this is a question which I would like to ask everybody also. What do they think about it, or how do they think about it? Do they agree with this understanding of why climate change is a independent driver of environmental degradation now? Any thoughts are welcome. Okay, you can just like unmute yourself and speak if you want to share your opinion on this. Okay, come on, guys. Okay, nobody. Okay, so I gave you a chance. Okay. Okay, so climate change will continue to amplify the existing risks which we have created, and it will create new risks because of how these human and natural systems are interconnected. And because we have caused a change in certain aspects because of our human anthropogenic activities, it will continue to amplify those effects and to create new risks which are happening. So in a sense, it has become an independent driver of environmental change. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so moving on to next question. Now, these are questions which have been asked in the previous one of the course. So I can't understand how agricultural forestry land use emit 18.4% of greenhouse gas emissions. Explain with example. So in the agriculture, forestry and land use, we have deforestation, which causes 2.2% of greenhouse gas emissions. And these are emissions which are emitted because of the change in the forest cover. So although we have reforestation, that is new plants and trees are being planted, so that reforestation is negative emissions because we are adding that back into the system. But we also have deforestation, which is positive emissions. We are giving out emissions. So the sum of this deforestation and deforestation is still negative. So we still have 2.2% of deforestation effects, even though reforestation practices are being followed much larger on a larger scale. So this is deforestation contributing 2.2%. Then we have crop burning, which contributes 3.5%. So burning the agricultural residues like we do in the states of Punjab and Haryana after the crop season. So it releases pollutants like CO2, nitrogen oxide, and methane, CH3. Then we have rice cultivation, which causes 1.3% of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this is because of methane, which is generated because the paddy fields are submerged in water. This is how rice grows. So methane is being generated in that anaerobic digestion process. So that from there we get this greenhouse gas or methane emission from rice cultivation. Okay, then we have agricultural soils. So we have nitrogen dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, is produced because of the synthetic fertilizers which we use in the soils for the more food production. So that is agricultural soils, use of fertilizer. Then livestock and manure contributes to 5.8%. So we have again the process of digestion and things relate in animals, which causes this methane as a byproduct, which is basically the process in which the microbes break down the food in the digestive system of the animal, cattle and sheep. Okay, so we have these sort of these are basically examples of how different these different subdivisions of agriculture, forestry, and land use contribute to the greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so moving on to next question. So what exactly is PM 2.5? So we have the particles. Particles are defined by their diameter for air quality regulatory purposes. So anything which is a diameter of 10 microns or less, that is PM10, is inhalable into lungs and can induce adverse health effects. We also have finer particulate matter, which is particles which are 2.5 microns or less in diameter. And these are referred to as PM2.5, so particulate matter of diameter 2.5 or less. And these are tiny particles in the air which reduce the visibility of the things in front of us and which causes the air to appear hazy when levels are elevated. So it gives you that fog kind of effect, but it's not dew particles which are present, but it's the particulate matter which is present. And it can lead to short-term health effects like eye, nose, throat, and lung irritation, coughing, sneezing, runny nose, shortness of breath. It can also affect lung function or worsen asthma and heart disease conditions. But long-term exposure to particulate matter can lead to increased rates of chronic bronchitis, which is a disease, reduced lung function, and increased mortality from lung cancer and heart diseases. So it has both short-term and long-term effects, which is why this the AQI is something which we check for when we have to go out, especially in areas like Delhi, when you have a very high AQI, especially around the months following this crop burning cycle in the states of Punjab and Haryana. So a lot of this particulate matter is present at that point of time. And we saw this Diwali graph also, where we see the increase in particulate matter after Diwali. So this is what is PM 2.5 and why it's critical in the AQI dimension. Okay, moving on. So why is India's pollution levels higher than Western countries like US, despite that Indian lifestyle is still more sustainable? So we have rapid industrialization. So as you know, India is a developing country. So we are rapidly growing both in our industrial sectors as well as in our economic and urbanization measures. So we have increased emissions because of factories, power plants, and transportation sectors, which are still unregulated sort of. And new regulations and policies are being developed. Then we also have agricultural practices like the subtle burning, which we talked about in North India, in the states of Punjab and Haryana. Then we have lack of regulations, which is that the environmental regulations in India are not that stringent compared to developed countries like US. Then a lot of still a lot of sectors in India rely heavily on coal for energy generation, and we have not fully transitioned to non-renewable resources as well. Okay. Yeah, if you have to go, you can leave the class. That's okay. This is more on a voluntary basis. If you want to stay, you don't have to ask me if you want to leave the class. Okay, thank you. And then also the to continue on, we also have India is a large and growing population, and we have a lot of pressure on the resources and infrastructure which is available to us, which leads to overcrowding and higher level of pollution in the city. We also have a sort of this is my opinion of it. We also have a sort of let's say class mentality, where even though we don't have a requirement for certain kind of things, we still end up buying them or procuring them just to have this status in the society. So we put a lot of this demand on resources as being influenced by this status mentality or this class mentality also. Okay, this is just my understanding of it. Okay, moving on to the next question. So what is the role of mercury emissions on the environment and what impact on human health is observed? So in the environment, mercury emissions can lead to contamination of soil and water, which affects the food chain and the other organisms associated in the food cycle. Then it also leads to air pollution, which causes damage to crop and forests. Then in the human health, it is toxic. Mercury is toxic to humans and it affects the brain, nervous system, reproductive system, and immune system if it's taken in larger quantities. Okay, so this is the question. We have, when we study the impacts of climate change, impact in men are more visible or given importance and they are studied. Are the impacts on other organisms included in EIA? So impact on other organisms, including flora and fauna, is included in EIA. And when we study EIA, we look up at impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems. And these ecosystems include both the well-being of the flora and fauna, as well as the human well-being as well. So we look up in EIA, we try to identify and mitigate the potential impacts on wildlife and habitat and ensure that the proposed projects are in a way minimize the harm to environment and biodiversity. So impact on other species and ecosystems are also significant and has far-reaching consequences, and EIA considers both the other organisms as well as humans in the study. Yeah, I hope that clears, gives a much better clarity to the domain of what EIA considers. So it considers both flora and fauna, including humans. Okay, moving on. So what is MT or PM red line in the extinct species bar chart? So this was a bar chart which is given in the biodiversity section. So we have the proportion of species in each extinction risk category. So on this side, we have the different species, and then this is the scale for which you look up at the number of individuals which are extinct in the wild, EW, which are critically endangered, CR, which are endangered, EN, which are vulnerable, VU, which are data is not given for these, data is not available, so DD, data deficient. Then we have NT, which are near threatened, and we have least concern. So we have, so this is a graph where we look up at the different species which are in the threatened species, red list of threatened species. And the red line which is being shown here is basically the sum of both critically endangered and vulnerable species group. So if you want to understand, it doesn't mention, I think, in the figure what this red line mean. So this is what it means. Okay. So this is another query. The world oceans comprise over 90% of the habitable space on the planet. I'm not getting the meaning of habitable space because the oceans cover 70% of the Earth's surface area. Am I missing something? Okay, so this is in response to this figure where it says that the world oceans comprise 90% of the habitable space on the planet. So in this, you are correct that Earth is about 29% land and 71% oceans. And these habitable zones are being defined, also known as Goldilocks zones, are defined where conditions are just right, that it is neither too hot and nor too cold for life. So we have, so the habitable space in this figure refers to areas that can support life, where the surface area refers to the total area of planet or object's surface, regardless of its ability to support life. And in the case of Earth, the ocean covers 70% or 71% of the surface area, but over 90% of the habitable space or the total volume of ocean is considered this habitable space where it can support marine life. Even though 70% is oceans, out of that 70%, 90% is habitable space, that is, it supports marine life. Whereas in the land, you might not have that much percentage of habitable space because you also have deserts where the conditions are extremely hard. Then you have the polar regions which are extremely cold, and you need a lot of people can't survive in those areas regularly except for research and other purposes. So this is what habitable space means. Hope this clarifies, gives you much better clarity on habitable space and why that statement is correct. Okay, so moving on. So why has capture fishing plateaued at 90 million ton? Is it because of overfishing and destruction of the ocean ecology, particularly due to trawl fishing? So this is in response to this figure. So you can see that the capture production has reduced, whereas the aquaculture production has increased. Now this is because of aquaculture, that is, we are farming fishes directly. We are farming fishes in fish farms and culture farms to meet the growing demand of fish as diet food instead of capturing fishes in the oceans. Okay. So that plateau in this graph is because of the increase in the aquaculture production. Okay. Could you please tell us elaborately how land preservation promote gender equality? Okay, so land preservation can promote gender equality by empowering women. That is, if land ownership and control is given to women, they are better at managing protected areas through tourism and forestry enterprises. Improving livelihood, so they have a stable base for income of local communities. Protection of forests can provide access to non-timber forest products such as fruit, medicinal plants, other resources which can be collected and sold. You also have sustainable agriculture and fishing practices which can further improve livelihoods. Supporting the health and well-being. So it helps in maintaining the health of ecosystem and services that they provide, such as clean water and air. Then you also have opportunities for education and capacity building for women and skills and knowledge development such that they can participate in management and the decision making of protected areas. It gives them a voice in certain areas, so it helps in promoting the gender equality. An example of this is through this research paper where the women empowerment for biodiversity conservation happened through self-help groups. So this is in the case of Periyar Tiger Reserve, which is in Kerala, India. So you have self-help groups where which are formulated by women of different families, and they take so they have a special group which is called as Vasthana Sena or the Green Force. It comprises of a group of 6 to 8 women which patrol every day from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the forest, voluntary without claiming any form of remuneration. And they use this forest not only, so they have become the self-help group where they have taken control over, they are working towards land preservation in this area, and they are so they together as a group, they have a presence in the forest during daytime, and they discourage illegal entry and control the biomass extraction which is happening. So this is a case study if you want to read further on how land preservation can promote gender equality. This is a very interesting case which you can read. I will put this presentation in the shared folder so you can access and read through this through the source which is given. Okay, moving on. So is environmental impact assessment and life cycle assessment similar? So EIA and LCA, that is environmental impact assessment and life cycle cost analysis or assessment, are similar. That is, both of them evaluate the environmental impact of a product, service, or process. They are similar in that sense, but they also have stark differences. So EIA is a method of predicting the environmental consequence of a proposed project or development and evaluating the potential risks and benefit, whereas LCA is a comprehensive quantitative analysis of the environmental impact of a product, service, or process from cradle to grave, that is from origin to uh, like to grave, and it evaluates the environmental impact of all stages of a product's life, from raw material extraction to production, use, and disposal stage. Now, EIA is focused on direct and indirect impacts of specific projects on the environment, such as air, water quality, wildlife, and land use, whereas LCA considers direct and indirect impacts related to production of materials, energy, and other inputs required for that product or process. EIA looks at the impacts of a single project, whereas LCA considers the entire life cycle of a product, service, or process. So this is how EIA and LCA differ. Okay. While they are both similar in evaluating the environmental impact, but this is for the project and this is for the product or service. Okay, so moving on. So this was all which we considered, which the queries which we received so far. So if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can just unmute yourself and ask, or put it in the chat box if you have any further questions. Okay, so now this is a, let's move on. Now this is a section which I have put up. This is not going to be in your examinations anyway, but this was a very interesting case which I came across. So I wanted to share it with you, and especially because it deals around the topics which we have discussed so far. So in this section, we are going to talk about the economic value of environment. So can you say what is the economic value of a tree? Okay, so now this is the economic value of a tree, and this is a case which happened in 2021 in West Bengal, India. So the West Bengal government decided to build 5 railway overbridges. So these are bridges which are over the railway tracks, and they wanted to build this overbridges by clearing 365 trees, and the project budget was 500 crore rupees. So the Environment Ministry guidelines, they exempt environmental impact assessment of any road project of less than 100 kilometer span. And the Supreme Court of India decided on a committee of 5 experts to determine they asked this five expert committee to be formed to determine the economic value of a tree, because this project involved clearing of such a large number of trees. So the Supreme Court of India asked this expert committee of 5 people to determine what should be a value of a tree. Okay, so to go about with this process, the 5 expert committee looked up at what are the ways in which a tree can contribute to the economic value. So it can provide you with timber, it can provide you with wood, it can lead to prevent the contamination of soil, improve the quality of underground water, gives you natural shading, it extracts CO2, gives you oxygen, it has a natural cooling effect, it has a heritage value if it's a very old tree, it has an ecological value in the ecosystem around it, and so on. It's a refuge or shelter for different birds and animals, and so on. Gives you certain kind of fruit. All of these different things they listed down, this 5 expert committee, and they came to the conclusion that 1 tree is equal to rupees 74,500 per year. Now this is a per year value. So the true value of a tree with 100 years of its lifespan, considering that a tree has 100 years, it would be equal to 72 lakhs. Now the committee said 50 trees have already been cut out of the 365 which was proposed in the project, but the 306 remaining trees, many of which are of heritage value, which are very old trees in that particular area, they would be valued at rupees 220 crores. That is the number of zeros which you can see. And the project budget was 500 crores. So the calculation is based on the products these trees would produce over 100 years of their natural lifetime, including oxygen, micronutrients, compost, biofertilizers, besides the trees being valuable members of the natural environment. Now, if the road is widened, it would require cutting down of 4,036 more trees, many of which would be big leafy trees of heritage values. Now, their value would be close to rupees 3,000 crores. But if the real loss to the government and humanity over the years would be taken into account, the value of these 4,000 trees, which would be additionally required if the road is to be widened further, would be around 30,000 crores, the committee said. And so the value of a tree in this case, the Supreme Court did not allow for this clearing of this the remaining trees uh, because of the high value which they were giving to the society. So now this is an interesting article which was again published in the Hindu as well. So you can have a look at it as well. So this is just something which I want you to think about, that not just from an AIA perspective, but from a normal perspective, also what is the value of the environment. Okay, so it's not just everything can be converted into monetary value. So this was an interesting case on the value of a tree, the economic value of a tree. Okay. So with that, we come to the end of this session. So thank you for attending this session. And if you have any feedback, you can either, like if you want to have discussions on certain topics which you feel like are critical, you can put them in the discussion forum. Okay. Okay, so we have a question. So for EIA certificate exam, should I focus on slides given or anything more study material needs to refer? No, for the EIA certificate exam, everything will come from the slides which have been shared so far with you week-wise, and going through the assignment questions as well. Nothing, if you want to read as a sort of reference material, the GO6 report is the source from which all of this material has been prepared in the original week's content. This problem solving sessions are an additional part of giving you questions which are from the course, but which are not included in the assignments or anywhere. So you can refer to these sessions as well. But for the exam, you don't need to read from any other reference or study material. I hope that answers your question. So again, for your certificate exams, a few things which I would like to mention. Definitions are very important. The full forms of abbreviations are important. Yeah. Definitions are important, full forms are important. Then you also have the dates and years of acts which are important. What is the function and objective of that act? If any event triggered or led to certain acts being formed. So those are things which are very, which will definitely come in your exams. So keep a note of that and keep revising them and understanding what was the basic understanding of it. So thank you. Okay, so we have one question. So why is there a clash between people and development projects in India, like the Sardar Sarovar Dam on Narmada? Okay, so it has to again deal with the two things. So for example, on one side you have the development team, which has an objective of developing a dam on the Narmada River, and on the other side you have the people or the villages which are being asked to resettle or rehabilitate because of this dam construction which are happening. Now the development project has a very nationwide objective, which is to sort of control the flow of the Narmada River, which is happening. Whereas the villages, their livelihood and their everything that they had that is given to them or that is known to them is being taken from them, and they are being rehabilitated to another place. Now, in a lot of these, like if you imagine like somebody asks you to leave, to vacate your house, and they will give you another house in any place, you would feel a sort of a sense of loss or something associated with that place. That is one aspect of it. But you also have this profit versus not profit actually, but national drive or something versus the livelihood of these people. Now again, these resettlement plans and things consider all of these aspects of it, but the conflict actually comes because of certain other factors. We will discuss about this in the settlement section also, when we talk about the settlement plans and how people are being moved, because this is a very important aspect of it. So this will come in further week content, and we will discuss about what is the exact scenario which happened in the Sardar Sarovar Dam on Narmada. Okay. So thank you so much for attending this session. And if you have any feedback or if you have any queries, you can further put them in the discussion forum or the ask a question forum, and we will cover them in the further week sessions. Also, there is another problem solving session for this week, which will happen on Tuesday. So you can look at that as well. Okay, so with that, we will, I think, stop this session. Okay, I think we have a question from Dimple or somebody raising their hand. Do you have a question, Dimple? Okay, no. Okay, we have another question. Do highway development in Uttarakhand causes landslides? Okay, we will take this question in the next session before we begin, because we are already exceeding our time for this session. Will the exam be computer based? I will confirm with the team and let you know about this, and we will discuss this in the next class, or I will put it in the discussion forum. Okay, thank you so much for attending this session. And I will now close this session. Hope to see you